All righty, I have 6 o'clock. Call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight and our guests that are with us and Sheriff and some of the commissioners. Appreciate everyone being here. First item of business would be to review the minutes from the July 18th meeting. Are there any corrections, deletions, or additions to those minutes that anyone's noticed? Mr. Ford? Have a motion by Mr. Ford to approve the minutes as presented, a second by Mr. Harsh. Any further discussion, any corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? They are approved. Next, we'll get into the financial statements. First over, we'll go over the trustees' cash balance statement for the ending July 22nd. This is our cash on hand, you might say, sitting in the various accounts. Is there any questions, anything on any of it? If everyone's satisfied with that, we will move on. Nothing anomalous noted. Get into the financial summaries and our projected fund balances at the end of June. We have a comparison of June 2021 to June 2022 on our property taxes, revenues, and expenses. That usually comes up. Everything looks in line there. Any questions on that page? Okay. Move into our summary financial statement. This is ending June. These totals should reflect where our ending year to date will be. There may be a few minor adjustments that come in that we're unaware of, but this should be it's not our final figure, but it's our final figure. Is that a good way to put it? It's not our audited final figure. Not our audited final figure, but this is where we think we are at this point. Look at our 101 general fund. Of course, all these figures should reflect 100% of our budgeted amounts. Go down through it line by line. A few things are a bit over, some are substantially over, some are under, but they're not substantially under. So I guess main thing is the bottom line, which is our year to date, that we wound up bringing in 105.1% of budgeted, what we budgeted on revenues. Anything in particular line items you want to discuss? Mr. Ford, you recognize?
I noticed our sales tax coming in real high. Is that an accurate figure?
Which one, sir?
4290 sales tax come in considerably higher than we had anticipated. Of course, I know we had that at the end of it coming there after you when you order stuff, but that's very good.
You're talking about 4210 local option sales tax.
No, 4290. County local option tax. We'd estimated 8,000, we had nearly 43.
Okay, I see it. Amy, can you explain that? Use your mind. Could you use your mic? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I will ask Cindy about it. It might be misreseated.
In percentages, it looks really, really high in total dollars. We did have some issues. If you'll recall, we talked about sales tax collections taking a nosedive in our May reporting month. Evidently, there was some things that were credited to our county that shouldn't have been, or debited to our county that shouldn't have been. So they had sent us a correction on that. That did bounce back up to the tune of 80,000, about $80,000 that was in error. We thought it didn't look right. It'd been trending substantially up, and all of a sudden we took this nosedive. So we were absolutely hoping that that would happen, and it did happen. We only got that word today. So glad. So our overall sales tax collections for the year looking really, really good.
That line right there is not the sales tax that you're thinking of. It's completely different. That's why I need to ask Cindy what that amount is for. It might have been misreceipted to the wrong fund.
And the local option sales tax, we had budgeted $700,000. It came in an actual $906,000. Of course, there again, we tend to understate it, but we've been having quite a bit more collections than previous years, I think, because of the internet sales being added into it. Yes. So that is a substantial chunk of why we are finishing out our revenues ahead of projections, was because our sales tax revenues did come in a little better than expected, a little better than budgeted. And some other things. Ones to note, of course, we're beginning to get some hotel motel tax in on the timeshares and things that we've never gotten much of in years past. The mixed drink tax is beginning to generate a little bit more revenue than it has in times past. I guess with COVID, people drank more. Our building permits and are up substantially. Our adequate facilities were up substantially from what we budgeted. Of course, that is very dependent on the economy and interest rates and all those type things. So it looks like a good year on the revenue side. We came in substantially over what we had budgeted and expected to get. And that's what we always hope to have. Mr. Clarity, you have a question?
Yes, how many places are selling mixed drinks? Is it?
Do what? I think there's 3. There's some of the Mexican restaurants, I believe, Keller's. Yeah, I think there's 3 establishments only that I can think of. I'm not sure. How does what now?
Wheel tax,
That's in Fund 156.
It's its own, it shows up in our education debt service. That's where it comes in, because it's all airline to that. Excuse me. Thought I hit the switch, but I didn't. All right, any more questions on revenue? Comments? On the 101? Okay, get into expenditures in the 101 fund. There again, pretty much every line item category is below the 100% mark. I think that's a tribute to the department heads and to the mayor, trying to hold the budget in line with what they had to spend. Total expenditures was right now 84.4% of what we had budgeted to spend. Is any questions on any of that? Is anything there, Amy or Mayor, that you want to point out that particularly surprised at or proud of, other than all of it? Okay. As the old saying goes, it is what it is.
Mr. Jewell,
Mr. Gully?
the 58,831, the American Rescue Plan Act, I see it's allocated fully. That's not completely spent at this time, just it's allocated. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is just the amount of it that we had budgeted out and what we had spent out of that. There's
So-
a line over here you'll see further over in here that shows what the balance remaining on it is.
It's allocated out is
Yes,
what we're saying,
that's what we
100%
had.
allocated.
Yes, what we had.
That's just for 101. The actual American Rescue's in two different funds.
But for the 101, we've completely
For 101,
allocated.
that was the bonuses that y'all approved for,
That
and,
wasn't 700,000 of it.
I'm sorry?
That wasn't 700,000.
No, I was going to list some
Yeah, okay.
things. It was for the bonuses, the HVAC system. There was different items, and that's just what you allocated to 101.
You're way ahead of me. Okay. Any other questions on the 101 fund? If you will look at the little bullet point there, you took at the top left fund balance July 1st, it's what was budgeted and what we wound up with June 30th. We wound up with a fund balance of $342,456 less than we started the year for or with. That's what those figures there show you. You'll see going forward, some of the accounts were a little under, some were a little over. And then we'll get to the total at the very end. There's always a question of how did that stand, fund balance. 111 Urban Services brought in 104.77% of what was budgeted, $1,203,142. Budgeted income would have been $1,148,414. Expenditures in the 111 about 80%. And there again in that line item fund balance, 148,050 less than it started the year with on the 111 fund. Most of the things there, your taxes and things, some of them percentages look big, but the total dollars weren't terribly large. And all of your categories were under the 100% line item in expenditures. Any questions on the 111 Urban Services? Mr. Gregory?
I see that 40290 again on this one, it's way down. Budgeted 38,000, it's showing 10,000, and the other one, 101 was way over.
That's why I'm thinking it was receipted to the wrong fund. So that's probably going to be an audit adjustment in a couple of months.
Looks as if it, some of it should have been classified into 111 instead of 101. That would account for the difference. 'Cause usually that's one of those that there's not a lot of difference in. Okay, we'll have to check that one out. Thank you for noticing. All right, 116 solid waste. Revenues, 120%, expenditures, 84.6%. Still had a budget deficit, I guess you'd say, from fund balance beginning to fund balance ending of $69,934. If you remember, did this reflect the truck that we had to add into it in these figures? That was like $300,000 chunk. I think that's what caused these figures to get skewed that direction. Is that reflected under convenience centers? Thank you. Any questions, comments?
So you stated that the 55,732 does reflect the truck that was purchased?
Yes,
So, and the insurance then that was on the truck that was there would be reflected where in the solid waste?
So
that's,
the monies that we received from insurance is up in your revenues at 49,700, the 60,454.
I see the insurance recovery there, the
that's
60,000.
showing up in the 49,700 insurance recovery,
Yep.
60,454. That's what they paid us on that truck. Anyone else? Go into 118 or ambulance service. Revenues slightly under what was budgeted. Wound up 98.4. Looks like patient charges, I guess the number of runs were a bit down. Is there any more money expected to come into this? Okay. So this is what we wound up. Expenditures were down 84%. I mean, at 84.6%. So you still, even with your revenues not coming in as expected, you still had a positive balance between fund balance, beginning of the year, end of the year, $33,644. That makes sense? Okay. All right. Mr. Burton has joined us. Thank you, sir, for being here. Let's see. Any other questions on ambulance on 118? All right, 121 is our pass through on CCA Core Civic. Like I say, the money comes in, the money goes out. Ms. Atwood is with us. Thank you. About to have a full house. County Drug Fund, it's the sheriff's fund. There again, it's drug fines and things of that nature. They have not kind of their discretionary funds, I guess you'd say, or it's earmarked for their use. Get into 151 debt service. Revenues 141%. Total expenditures 92.2. We picked up about 195,000 and some odd dollars in that category, that line item. As you can see, at the graph at the bottom, our interest on our variable interest loans are beginning to trend up. It's only about 0.75% increase at this point from the low that it was previously. But that will make a difference going forward. Amy, can you go down, run down the things that we were able to retire in their entirety this year?
If I can remember. Admin building was paid off this current year. not what we're looking at. The front end loader was paid off out of this account, and a trash truck was paid off in the urban services account.
Mayor, do you have anything to add to that? That sound about where we're at on those things?
That sounds pretty accurate. I'd have to have it in front of me, but I do know we paid off the trash vehicles and the administration building in the current fiscal year versus the other one. So, but that, I think that's about right. We paid some off in previous fiscal years, so I think that's what we paid off this year.
Okay, anyone have any questions on that?
That came out of 156. They were asking about 151.
Comes in on the education debt service, yeah. Okay. 156, education debt service. This is what Mr. Ford was asking about, Mr. Gully, the wheel tax. Where we wound up an actual at 354,708. Which was about 98.5% of what we budgeted. Feel like some of that's because people wanted to buy cars, but there weren't any cars for them to buy. So I think that kind of affected that substantially. Mr. Ford?
Ask, do we have anything else to pay this year on any of our outstanding loans? From now on till,
Yeah,
they have to be paid, everything's been paid that we need to pay in last year's fiscal year, right?
and
we
last
still work-
last fiscal year, but
Yeah.
not the one we're in now.
Right, so this 195,000 extra, you can't apply that anywhere on any of our debt? So it would wipe out the Justice Center, not Justice Center, the administrative office.
Well, we've budgeted that money coming out to pay it off this year. It will be paid off in this year's budget.
It has been paid off.
So we've already paid that.
Good,
So that's gone, but that money carried over was knowing it was going to carry over is
Yeah.
why we were able to do those
Right.
things or the rationale for doing them. Is that correct? Mayor?
Yes, sir. We knew we'd retired some previous debts and that freed up some debt service. And so we went ahead and paid off in the current fiscal year, which will not be reflected in these numbers because that's from June. And I think in July, we paid off the administration building and that was 100 and something thousand. I don't remember the exact amount.
Any questions on education debt service? See where we're at with that. There again, what little bit we have left, those are variable interests. They're trending up about 0.75%, 0.6%, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'd say they're going to trend up for a bit and before they start going back down. The good news is we don't have a lot of debt that are on variable. Right. 131 Highway Fund, most of this is your contribution from property tax and their gasoline fuel tax, which was, as usual, as expected, above what was budgeted, because we try to under budget on expenditures. I'm on revenues and over budget a little bit on expenditures. 105 on revenues, 77.3, and that gave them a positive bump in their fund balance of $223,698. Is that everything on them, or will they have anything else come in? That's total on them. Okay. Any questions on it? All right. Get into our year end things to kind of go over and point out. In our 101, these are our ending balances for I guess you'd say restricted or committed functions. Look down through them, see which ones you have questions about. And I'm sure Mayor Chambers or Amy can help us out with these. These are things such as your court fees and drug treatment and little funds where donations are made, such as the library and animal shelter and things of that nature. Are there any questions on that page? Anything that looks weird to you?
What is on with this incumbency?
What does that dollar amount?
Yeah, what's, what is this encumbrances?
That's things that we have said we were going to spend on, but haven't been,
That's your purchase orders that haven't cleared yet.
they haven't cleared, they haven't been fulfilled.
Okay,
They've been issued, but haven't cut the check for because we haven't received the goods or services at this point. All right, I think that pretty well covers it. If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to accept it. Mr. Ford, have a motion by Mr. Ford and a second by Mr. Gregory to approve the report as presented. Any further questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it is approved. Next, we'll go into our budget amendments. We have first one, 2023-101-01R. This is a request to for the animal shelter. The animal shelter board wants to install a kennel system in the shelter to the tune of $8,000 and install kennels in the van for $1,500. They have these funds sitting in their reserve balance where they've received donations. So this will take $9,500 out of their reserve, which is $15,948, which will leave a balance of $6,448 in their reserve fund. This is giving them, letting them spend their money where they see fit. Mr. Gully?
Would those have to be bid out, or is that already just an approved piece? They can just spend it on whomever wants to install those or whatever wants to install those? Or is this a process that would have to go through a bidding process?
Mayor, can you answer that one?
I believe one of the kennels going into, I can't remember if it's either the van or the shelter. The vendor they're getting from is one of the few that makes that. So there's not a whole lot do that. I think they got a quote from them. And it's kind of a, how they call it, a single service, sole provider of it. And then the ones under, if it's under $10,000, they don't really have to bid it. But they did try to find the best price, and the 1,500 is actually a bit more than what it'd be for the ones in the van, a little bit more.
That answer your question, sir? Anyone else? Mr. Walsh, I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve by Mr. Walsh. Is there a second? Mr. Ford makes a second. Any further discussion on this? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Okay, we have one no. It is approved, send forward to the full body Monday night with a favorable recommendation from Budget and Finance. Next one is 101, let's see, 2023-101-02 FB. This is amending the 101 General Services Fund. This is funds that have come in on jail medical care, funds that we received from the state. They were showing in our fund balance or last check that we received from the state. And they were reflected in your fund balance. So we need to get them back out of fund balance and put them into this category. Is that correct, Amy? Did I explain that correctly? Good enough, Mr. Gully.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve, Mr. Gully, second by Mr. Gregory. Any further questions or discussions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move this to the full body. Yeah, we had one, I'm sorry, forgot to tell you that we need to add. This is a little bit of a cleanup. This is 101-03 FB. This is a request to amend the 101 fund. Just let me explain it. The state approved adjustments to UT Agricultural Extension Service salaries and benefits. Came up a little bit short in that line item category in this new budget year. So we need to pull $435. So pretty a minor amount for our part of what we get out of this to add into these line items on salary, Social Security, retirement, things of that nature. Mr. Gully.
Motion to approve.
That motion to approve, Mr. Gully, second by Mr. Harsh. Any further questions? Everybody understand what we're doing? Just to clean up. They made it retro, didn't let us know that it was coming down the pipe. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that one is done. Next we have, let's see, I believe that's all of our budget amendments. Move into line 5, ARPA spending approval. This is a request to use ARPA funding from the Health Council to set up a mental health and substance abuse services in the community. This is one of the original allowed uses from ARPA funds. And Mayor, I'd let you explain it a little bit further if you'd like to, please, sir. It's pretty self-explanatory if you had time to read through it, but go ahead and update
When
us
the
on it.
federal government created the American Rescue Plan Act, one of the things they specifically wanted or have really pushed is to look at using some of the funds to address mental health and substance abuse in your communities, specifically for low income and minority populations. They were more adversely affected by COVID than other populations. And so I worked with the Health Council to create a mental health and substance abuse task force that consisted of members of the Health Council plus other stakeholders in the community. They've had committees evaluate this and come with a proposal requesting $80,000 to do getting a service provider here and some other expenditures. And at this time, I'm going to ask some representatives of the Health Council, Miss Brenda Harper and Janie Odom are going to come up and try to speak to this a little bit more in depth, and they can answer any questions. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Miss Harper.
Thank you. Hi, I appreciate you all having us here tonight. I'm Brenda Harper. I currently serve as the chair for the Health Council and have been involved here with this Health Council for several years. You also should have a handout there about the Health Council, because some of you all may not be familiar with the Health Council in terms of what we do and that sort of thing. So if you take a look at that, you can see that this group of people has done a lot of things here in this county with the focus on improving the lives of all of the individuals that live here in Trousdale County, whether it be children or seniors, whether it be for physical health or emotional health. This health council has also received some awards for the different things that we've done. So, you know, you kind of may say, well, you know, why did this task force come into being? Some of us that were on the health council back in February, March, went to mayor chambers, well, we had a small meeting, and then we went to mayor chambers and we basically said, we feel like we've got to do something to address the substance abuse and mental health issues in this county. Because we know from a survey that we did of many of our citizens back in 2019, before COVID shut us down, and what the people in this community said that had impacted their lives the most were substance abuse issues, mental health issues, suicide, and obesity. They said those were the things that had impacted either themselves or their families the most. You know, I venture to say that most of us in this room have been touched in some way by either substance abuse problems, mental health problems, or known of someone who has lost someone to suicide. So we know it's real. We know it's a problem. So what we're proposing and doing, we had our first big task force meeting back the tail end of March. We had 60, 70 people that came. We invited everybody we could think to come to partner up with us. And what we decided was we need mental health services here in this county. We need to take away the barrier of people having to drive 30+ minutes to get somewhere. We need to work on fighting the stigma, you know, where people don't want to go get help. And we just, you know, we have to educate our community. And, you know, so those are the things that we know that we've got to do. So from that big initial task force group and the people that we invited, we have had an entity, Volunteer Behavioral Health, has agreed to be that service provider. They are willing to send here to Trousdale County a psychiatric nurse practitioner, a therapist, and a care manager that will be here, and we can remove some of those barriers. So what we want to do, and we need funds to do, the Health Council wants to be kind of help coordinate those services, make sure they happen, find the right rental space so that it can meet all the licensure requirements, you know, so that we can, you know, an Americans with Disabilities Act and all those kind of regulations. So the space has to be the right kind of space. It has to be a space where people feel comfortable going, so they don't worry about the stigma of somebody knew I went and, you know, was talking to a therapist. We've got to work on that. You know, so that's what we're looking to do. So that those people can go and they can get those services right here in Hartsville. You know, Janie is like me. Janie's different from me. Janie lives here in Trousdale County and I don't. I've just been blessed to be able to work with members of Trousdale County for several years. But, you know, just working at the hospital, seeing what happens at the hospital, you know, and just being a Trousdale County resident. So we know there's the issue and when there's a need, and we're hopeful that you all will see fit to fund this proposal. Any questions?
Janie, were you gonna speak at all or just answer questions if needed?
I think Miss Brenda done a great job. You know, just recently, unfortunately, we lost someone to suicide, and we usually in October have a ceremony out in the front. I'm not sure what we're going to do this year, but it's very real. It's going to affect somebody, everybody in some way. And hopefully with everybody working together, we can at least try to get some help available.
Okay, I had a few questions that have been raised to me about this. I know the need to put this facility in a medical facility. Do we have somewhere targeted we think we can rent that would be suitable? You already identified that.
We have been around and we've looked at different sites in different places. We are hopeful about one of the locations that we've looked at because it appears that it would require minimal renovations to meet all of those regulations.
Okay. As far as staffing, is this going to be 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week? When will this be available, these services?
One of the things that we know is, you know, no entity can afford to send 3 full-time staff over here 40 hours a week from the beginning. So what they will do and what they have agreed that they will do is they will start out slow. And as the community seeks those services and the need increase, then their availability and being here on site will also increase.
So will they have set hours or will it just be an on-call as needed type situation?
I believe my understanding is that they will start out, you know, like with a set day of the week and then bill from that. It won't be on call.
Okay, I do know that a lot of insurance will cover these type of expenses. Will there be billing set up to be able to recoup?
Volunteer behavioral health, they will accept Medicare, TennCare, people that qualify for what's called a safety net. We have another entity, Centerstone has what they call a virtual clinic that takes private insurance, and they have agreed to also be a provider for these folks. One of the things that we have worked on as a task force is to develop a brochure so that we want to get those brochures out in the community and to have the groups that will be able to provide the services and the payer sources that will work for those groups as well.
Will we need to execute contracts or MOUs with them going forward if this is approved, Mayor? Is that the way this will be
Well,
structured?
The Health Council is a 501c3, so it'll work like donations to other organizations. They will have to give us, let us see their financial records and provide those as we go forward. So it'll work just like a donation to the Chamber of Commerce or other organizations. So we don't need a memorandum of understanding or anything like this. And the Health Council has been set up under a program under the Department of Health for the state of Tennessee.
And one thing I didn't say, Mr. Jewell, is this is a 2-year, this is like 2-year seed money. We are very hopeful that this service will continue indefinitely, but that's one of the things that we'll have to see, and that the service providers will, they will have to take it and run with it after that 2-year support from the Health Council.
So this is just to get this started, basically.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Ford, I believe you were next, or Mr. Harsh, y'all want to fight? Who was next? You didn't push a button.
My question is, what if the person coming to see you doesn't have insurance?
There is a program called Safety Net Funds for both for adults and for children. And so that entity, Volunteer Behavioral Health, is a safety net provider. They can help them apply for that funding that covers mental health care.
Mr. Harsh,
Move to approve this funding.
have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Gregory. Mr. Clarity, did you have a question?
Yes. You're saying, if I understand you right, it's $40,000 per year to operate? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, after the first 2 years, do you think you're going to get $40,000 a year donations to keep going?
Client fees. The clients will be paying for services, and the service provider would then pick up the responsibilities for the rent, the space, all of those kind of things. We, the Health Council, want to get it up and moving.
So there'll be no payment from the county whatsoever, the way you're setting it up?
Not after the first 2 years unless you all feel generous. And you never tell anybody no to donations, do you? You just don't.
Hard to make that prediction as to whether there would be further funding needed or not needed, but this is seed to get it started. It is not an ongoing thing the way it's presented. Hopefully it'll be ongoing, but it should be self-sufficient once you get it going, I think is the point. Were there any other questions? Mr. Ford? Yes, sir. Question was, it's coming out of ARPA funds, and that is correct. I appreciate all the work that went into this by the Health Council and Mayor Chambers in putting this together. I don't think there's a person sitting here that wouldn't think that this is sorely needed in our community and has been for some time. We just didn't know where, who, how to get it started. And I appreciate y'all taking that on and making this happen. We do have a motion in a second, Mr. Gully.
Just, and I agree with you 100%. I think this is a great piece and I appreciate the work you put into it. I do have one concern, and you stated that you hoped in 2 years that the seed money had it running. How negatively affected would this thing, would the people that are being served by this effort, how negative would it affect them if it just automatically literally closed because there wasn't the funds there to continue running it? I see a lot of individuals that don't seem to have insurance and things of that nature that would come through and things of that nature is what my worry is.
And I hear you, because we know that there will be some individuals that will seek those services and will be very thankful that the services are right here in town. One of the things I think that we've got to do, and I say we, this is a collective we in this room and a lot of people that aren't in this room, we have to make the community aware of the services so that it can stay in place. Okay. That is one of the things I do feel sure that volunteer behavioral health or any of these agencies that are providing the direct services, if they can't be here because there just wasn't the need or the people didn't utilize it like we wanted them to, then they will help ensure that those folks can get the services somewhere.
That answer your question, sir? Okay, we do have a motion by Mr. Harsh, second by Mr. Gregory, I believe. Is that correct? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is done. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate all
Thank you
you've
so
done.
much, everybody.
This will go to the full body Monday night, still up to them to approve it. All we're doing is sending it forward with a favorable recommendation at this point. Okay. I believe that winding us down, Amy, Mayor, do you have any discussion items, anything else that we haven't covered?
No, sir.
Commissioners, did anyone have anything they wanted to bring up or ask about? Public comments, is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on anything that we've covered tonight that hasn't been covered? Okay, seeing none, have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Walsh. Mr. Ford has a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We will reconvene for our work session in about 15 minutes.